Songs of the Great Lakes followers and family and friends as well that are watching. I very much have an amazing guest with us today that I am so excited to bring and have her share her life with and her experiences, Great Lakes shipwrecks, maritime history, all that jazz. But first, I do want to acknowledge and thank somebody who made this possible, Brother Rick Mixter, who we both we all know and we all love, especially to Jeri. And thank you very, very much, Brother Rick, for making this possible and introducing us. So thank you. If you're watching, I bet you are. But now, would our kind guest, Jeri Feltner, proudly and amazingly give us her introductions and tell us a bit about who you are and what you've done.
My goodness. Well, first of all, I've been around forever, a long, long time at 83 soon. And I have been enjoying the people in the environment of Great Lakes shipwreck diving and Great Lakes maritime history. Not only the history itself, but one of the fabulous things for me is to share with all the great people in the Great Lakes. It's been a good life, and I've, with my husband, Chuck Feltner, who's in heaven for 6 years now, did a lot of amazing adventures together in the scuba world and Great Lakes maritime history, along with many other endeavors.
So 1967, is that correct?
67 for
1967 is when you that you kind of started getting into all of this. Is that correct?
actually we were certified together by the illustrious Dave Trotter.
Oh,
He was our instructor in 1976. So
1976.
that
Okay.
started once 1976 came and we had our shipwreck diving course. We then went the next year. We went to the Straits of Mackinac in 19. I'm trying to remember dates. It's terrible. 1977 with Dave Trotter. And our first shipwreck dive was on the Cedarville. And I followed Dave into the engine room. It was just so fascinating. And then, of course, you'd have to know Chuck. He's a like type A plus plus plus. And we immediately bought a boat, bought all of our dive gear, wetsuits at the time. And and then just that summer of 77, we spent all weekends and vacation diving and searching for shipwrecks.
Incredible. I apologize for getting those dates wrong. I do that all the time where I say I was supposed to say 67, meant 76. But that's incredible. What was it, I guess, what drew you or what made you want to do this particular field? What was it? Like just the allure of going on these wrecks or the people a part of it, or was it just a whole kind of mishmash of everything? What was it that got you into it?
It's a good question. Very good question. Back in for a dozen years, Chuck and I skied in many, many areas around the world. And then we got out of skiing and decided to try something else. And Chuck worked for Ford at the time, and there was a class being held for scuba diving. So we thought, well, let's do that. Just as an exciting thing to share together. That's how that started.
That's awesome. I wish I could have met him. Chuck sounds like an incredible man. Is he
Oh,
quite passionate, quite driven, it sounds like?
oh my gosh! The people that may be watching this that know Chuck Feltner would definitely agree that this man was dynamite. He was just brilliant and powerful and not always, pleasant, but that was part of his personality. But he got so much done. He really was dynamic, and in anything that he endeavored, he did it 1000%. It was quite an experience with him for 51 years of our life together.
Wow. May I ask, where did you guys meet or how did you
Oh my gosh, that's a whole new story. That we, I worked at Ford, at Ford Motor Company. Gosh, I started there in 1963. I was 20, and I met him uh, in 1969 at one of the buildings I worked in. But I did not want to get involved with him. It was just too complicated. So, but I met him at a ski. I was at a ski show with my brother in 1969, and Chuck was there because he was president of a ski club. And then he saw me, and I saw him, and I said, "Oh my gosh, there he is!" And so he came up to me, and I introduced him to my brother, and then he grabbed my hand and said, "Oh, it's so good to see you. There's a party afterwards. Would you like to go?" And I said, "No, I don't, because my brother has to go to a National Guard thing at 6 a.m. in the morning." And my brother pipes up, "Oh, well, he could take you home." And I thought, "Oh my God, no, I'm trying to avoid this guy, right?" Well, anyway, the rest is history.
Wow, look at that, like, one after another.
Yeah,
You
yeah, it
you
was
you've forgiven
amazing.
your brother since then, I'm guessing?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's really something how life evolves. It is amazing to me, and it was meant to happen. And again, we've done some great things together, and
Yeah,
I cherish all those memories and miss him, of course, terribly.
absolutely. I'm glad you're comfortable with talking with him, and I'm glad we can, bring light to his memory and talk about some of the experiences both you and him have shared, so, um well, cool. That I love getting to know people on a personal basis like that, and especially everybody else watching, family, friends, and just other subscribers. So, you, I should ask. So you had parts with the as lighthouses as well, correct? You were for in the Straits of Mackinac only, or
Yes, actually, well, our diving, we went all over the Great Lakes to dive, but we spent a dozen years in the Straits of Mackinac, and that's when we, found shipwrecks and, of course, researched them and documented them and filmed them, showed the films around the Great Lakes, and then eventually that led to a book. So we did the Shipwrecks of the Straits of Mackinac book in 1991. And then when we hung up our fins in 1992, literally hung them up, and then we took our boat and started doing some cruising. So we cruised up, the northern part of Lake Michigan, I mean Lake Huron, Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, and ended up on one of our trips to Drummond Island. And well, Chuck really, really was fascinated with Drummond Island because it was isolated and, like a frontier, another frontier to develop and conquer. Um, so he and I went to lunch and went in the little town they had. Then we walked across the street to the real estate office, and just to kill time. And the guy that was there said, "Oh, you have a boat. We have some property that was just listed. Do you want to take a look?" Yeah, we had time, so we went down there. Stood stood on a bunch of big rocks in front of trees, and the guy said, "Well, here it is." And Chuck said, "This is just wonderful." Anyway, so we ended up getting this property on Drummond Island, and it was all trees, and we built a home there on Lake Huron, looking out at the Detour Reef light.
wow,
And every room had a view of that light, so it was an important light. Well, then short time that was we moved into that house in 19, oh my gosh, try to remember time. It's terrible. 1997. Yes, 1997. And then we heard that the Coast Guard was going to tear down the lighthouse because they didn't need it anymore. After all of our effort to have that as a view. So there were local people that I got involved with to help save that lighthouse. And Chuck and I, um, for, I don't, well, 1998 is when the Lighthouse Organization, Detour Reef Light Preservation Society, was established. And and then it took a few years to get grants from the federal and state governments and private people to get enough money to restore that lighthouse. So the organization was established in 98, and the lighthouse was restored and ready to roll in 2005. So we got very involved in that with a lot of fabulous people that were part of that lighthouse group. And of course, not only to restore the lighthouse, but it was the people, the wonderful people I met in that world that I still am friends with today. Is It would That's what motivates me a lot too. History, but honestly, to be totally honest, it's the people that that inspire me.
Wow. Yeah, good, incredible that you were able to preserve that and save it and keep it, and just like you're saying, meeting the people makes it all come together.
Uh, so many people put so much heart, blood, sweat, and tears and heart into restoring that. And to this day, 20, how many years later, from 98 to 26, is it's still operating, and they offer overnight keeper programs that honestly are booked solid. That very popular program. So I just feel so good about what Chuck and I helped do to restore and preserve that lighthouse and in the history.
He was, I'm sure, a big voice in keeping that restored as well. Did where did he where else did he lead with that? With you two kind of co-doing that? Was that also part of like when you guys were with the Eber Ward or the journey that you found? Did that was also with Chuck? Like you two kind of heading that together, or
Well, yeah, the shipwrecks of the Straits of Mackinac were an extremely big part of our life, and we found 5 wrecks in the Straits, and then we filmed many of the wrecks there, and then documented them. And as I said earlier, we presented them around the Great Lakes, Chicago, Toronto, Detroit, of course, in other areas. It was really a big part of our life. Yes, and again, not only preserving history, the shipwrecks, but also just honest to God, the fabulous people you meet along the way. And then our buddy Rick Mixter, of course, is a perfect example.
oh yeah, we can't forget about the glue that holds everything together. As
Yes,
he's been dubbed
yes.
the golden retriever of shipwrecks, if I remember correctly. That was what he was dubbed
Oh yeah.
once.
Oh my gosh, that's a good point. I mean, way to describe that. So he is. He'd make a perfect golden retriever.
Oh, I
Oh,
bet he's laughing. Well, awesome. I wanted to ask also, so how you got into the women's hall, or divers scuba diving women's hall? How did that's incredible. How did that work?
I'll tell you that was one of that uh, event in Orlando last fall was just amazing. One of the finest things that I've experienced. But that whole thing started. Well, I've done certain things in the Great Lakes as a female that were a pioneer uh, category, as they call it, and I did it because I enjoyed it, but not even thinking that, gee, no one else has done that kind of work before. And so it got recognized along the way. And then a good friend of mine, Mickey Trotter, Dave's wife, had put a bug into a gal's ear who is part of this group about, you know, having me be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So she got that started. And then a wonderful gal that I became friends with, Pat Stayer, is the one who was my sponsor. And oh, she spent months with me getting all the material. I have like a file this thick on my dive accomplishments and different things that I've had to get together. I was really amazed at all the stuff that came out after all these years. Don't forget it. I've been around forever. And so Pat Stair was a significant part of that process too. And then I went to the event. It was just so fabulous. It was a group of probably over 200 women from around the country that actually around the world. It's an international organization that have done some amazing things underwater. And I feel so honored to be a part of that.
Wow, what describe your feelings when you were getting like how did you couldn't really even describe the weight of that? I mean, that's incredible.
I know it is incredible, it really is. Well, I have to honestly say, Chuck Feltner, my husband, uh, worked with a wonderful woman, Lise Kinahan, who was part of the Underwater Canada program. She sadly died, but he was working with her on that app about 15 years ago. And and then she died, so he just shelved it. We shelved it, and but so naturally, the kind of stuff I did was with Chuck. I mean, he was a big motivator, and so when I stood there on that stage, and they pinned me, I I cried, obviously. Then I looked up and I thanked Chuck. I said, "Thank you, Chuck, for helping me get here." And I wish he could have been there. Oh, I know he is very aware of what went on, but the spiritual world. But yeah, it's a hard feeling to describe. It was just so wonderful to be even considered for that group, and then to be inducted into that Women's Divers Hall of Fame was just a fabulous experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's incredible. And like you're saying, just looking back at everything that brought you to that moment, both you and Chuck, and just the experiences and everything that had that yeah, just indescribable. I love that. Incredible, Jerry. Well, awesome. Would you mind then if we start talking a couple shipwrecks in your neck of the woods there, particularly the Cedarville? Would you care to share how that was first time diving on the Cedarville?
Well, the Cedarville was an extraordinary wreck. It's the most recent wreck in the Straits. I don't even remember when it sank. Actually, you'd think I would. I could look at my book. I could look at the shipwreck book and this is, of course, that book, the book.
Okay.
But it was a 550-foot steel freighter that went down. It was just it's turned upside down. And but Dave Trotter, my instructor, found a way to get into the engine room. So it was just an enormous feeling to be on the first shipwreck because several people died on that wreck, and and to feel that feeling of being in a museum almost, that here is a ship that was sailing and vital to our economy, and then due to terrible circumstances, of course, it sank, lives lost, and to be there on that wreck it's extraordinary. It really is a feeling that you're awed by all of it. I don't know how else to describe it. It's awesome.
So, like you're saying, just the enormity of it, and so you were going in through crooks and corners, or in the cargo hold, or kind of what areas were you?
Well, it's turned upside down. It's a rather dangerous wreck to dive.
Okay.
So, as I recall, again, we're going way back. We're going so far back. That would have been 1977. I'm not even sure your parents were born then. But trying to remember just the feeling of being amazed at the enormity of the loss of this ship and the lives. It was, yeah, it was pretty exciting to be our first dive.
Yeah.
That was part of the reason we got hooked, I think.
Well, so you've mentioned Dave Trotter is a big part of it. How has that been then over these years working with Dave and doing these wrecks, discovering them, or just everything that goes into that? How has that been?
Well, Dave has done some extraordinary things with his Underwater Research Associates team. As you know, finding the Carruthers was his last major find. There'll be more, I'm sure. But we became very good friends. He and Mickey and I do a lot of things together right now. And but he's done some fabulous things. He'd be a great guy to interview.
That's my hopes. That's my hopes.
Yes.
Well, cool. He taught you guys, you and your husband taught you guys everything, and yeah, like you say, he's got his own stack of accomplishments. That is incredible.
Yes, yes, he is really something. What that he and his team have done is extraordinary.
Were you with him ever on like first time finds for
No,
shipwrecks or no? Okay.
we did not do that. See now, Dave, we did our initial dive together in the Cedarville, and then we dove a couple of other wrecks together. Not in the Straits. I'm not sure. drove any other wrecks with him in the Straits. I don't remember. I'd have to ask him. But we were not that involved in our diving world. It wasn't. We went our separate ways in what we pursued.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. What about the Eberward or Eberward, however people care to
Either
pronounce
I
that?
say
How
either.
Eber, that's what I started saying, and then people can correct me all day if they think it's spelled the other way or whatnot. How's that? I've done one of those. I've done that ship on the channel, an episode
Oh,
on it. So having firsthand information on it is a big win.
oh. Yeah, yeah, that wreck, oh my gosh, that's probably, along with the Sandusky, the best wreck as far as most popular, most challenging, because it sits at 140 feet, and it's got a lot of things to see on it. Still, it has a toilet and a bathtub, and it's really quite a fascinating wreck. And what's really interesting though, with when Chuck and I discovered it in 1980, we were you may have had like a 10 feet visibility. Okay, so we kind of inched our way around the wreck, but it was a wreck, a shipwreck. You could see every it there weren't any zebra mussels covering anything like I see film that people take recently of that wreck, and it's wow. And what you see is something that looks like a wreck, but it's all covered with this thick layer of zebra mussels. But the best part about it is from 10 feet of visibility, you can now see the whole wreck. And, you can see 100, well, not, maybe not the whole wreck, but at least 100 feet or so of visibility that we didn't have back in those days.
No, that's a common thing that comes up is people talk about it's like a yeah, you've gained clear water and more visibility, but at the same time now the wrecks are coated with them and they're even more, I guess, on a ticking timer for how much longer we'll have them, especially in these
I
lower
know
lakes.
it's fascinating. It's changed the whole environment and the integrity of the shipwrecks. I marvel at the change that has occurred with these little guys.
Well, that's all the more reason why I'm glad I have people such as yourself and sharing about Chuck to keep keep this history preserved and talked about. That is so important. That's one thing I get really fired up about is for the next generation is bringing maritime history for the Great Lakes to younger people. And I think Rick is an incredible pioneer with that. You see his events at festivals, or Brendan Baylett has through Wisconsin. He's got a program that he does, and they will do stuff with students. So it's encouraging, but I think it's also really important for people like yourself to get them fired up. Get these kids like, hey, there's a whole world out there on the Great Lakes from 100 years ago or even longer that needs to be explored. Is that have you done some work with that too for getting younger people interested in
No,
this?
I haven't. I have
Okay.
not, but it's a fabulous thing to consider doing, and uh, it's amazing what the kids don't know. I know even for the lighthouse, even in our local area, the kids in the local schools weren't really aware of what the Detour Reef Light was all about. So they're making a big effort to educate the kids. And yes, I would love to see this happen. The Association for Great Lakes Maritime History, fabulous organization since the early 80s, has so many great people that are involved in so many different aspects. And I'm sure that's something that they are going, may have already are, and will pursue to educate the children through the school system in particular about the history of our Great Lakes shipwrecks. That is, it's like each one is a museum. And now the shipwreck, what these in the Straits of Mackinac, there are many museums in the Great Lakes that will show the shipwrecks, like Whitefish, of course. That's a major one. That's the best one, I think. But then there's one in the Straits of Mackinac, the shipwrecks of the Straits of Mackinac Museum, which has a lot of artifacts and drawings and photographs of of the ships in the Straits of Mackinac. In fact, many of the film, it shows the film that we took, and then it shows it will compare it to the film that recent people have taken. So you can see the difference between the 10 feet visibility and what you see in, to the 100 foot visibility that occurs now with the latest technology of filming. But at least these museums, there are many of them that do have, I think, programs for kids too. The Whitefish Point, they're the ones that are on the top of the list, have a lot of programs that involve children, that they teach them about the shipwrecks, especially in Lake Superior, but probably others too. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This needs to be done, and you're doing that. You're doing that with your YouTube channel, right? Uh, it's just a fascinating world, and I'd love to know that the children are being educated about that.
Yeah, that's like you're saying, the Whitefish Point Museum got me hooked on all of this. It got me inspired on this because yes, the Edmund Fitzgerald was like a gateway into all this other long history, 1600s iron ore trade, fur trade, all this stuff that was going on. I love World War One, and learning of 1913 white hurricane that happened. Like there's just so much more to it that I didn't know anything about. And when I went to that museum or any other of the other museums, I was like, wow, I want more. I want to meet these people. I want to meet people like you who've been here before me and can give me that, because unless I get certified to dive scuba and whatnot, I want to maybe. um Talking to you and reliving your experiences is the closest I'm going to get to diving the Cedar or seeing the Eberward, or even just the lives. That was something that was something you and I were talking about the other day on the phone. Was as incredible and amazing as artifacts are and shipwrecks and the history with it, especially you and I were connecting on the lives when you learn, obviously, a lot of times people's final moments on these wrecks and how powerful that can be, where it's like, wow, 23 people died on this vessel, or these people were caught in a horrific blizzard off of uh Lake Huron, or like the Cedarville, a terrible collision. Like, just to know that, and then going into these wrecks, is that was something you and I were connecting on, was like, I want to bring these people's lives and their names as best as I can to 2026 and beyond, but also in hopes to I'm a Christ follower, to meet these people in eternity one day. Like, hey, you were still being talked about these many, many years ago. And I know that impacted you as well. And especially for you and firmly believing Chuck is still watching over you, and all that. That was a big one for me that I really enjoyed connecting with you on.
Well, I am fascinated at what you're doing, really and truly. You are inspirational in getting the people that were involved with the shipwrecks recognized, and that's something that Rick really pursues too. It's a wonderful thing. It's not just the wreck and all the things that go on there, but it's the people that you know lost their lives, especially on these wrecks. And I really like what you're doing with that.
But
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I don't do it for money. I don't do it to make a name for myself. I'm just doing it because I love these people, and I love you and Rick and everybody that I've met, because we all have that shared passion for this history and these aspects with it, and I'm incredibly honored and humbled by that. So I don't take that lightly.
Oh, you just keep it up. You got a long way to go yet. You're on the right track, that's for sure. I just marvel at it. I was just so happy to have met you and connected.
So you knew Rick when you said, was it when he was 5 or 6 years old? How long have you known
Yeah,
that
he was
man?
about, I think he was just turned 5. Yeah, he
Wow.
came to our he came to our house, actually 25. He came to our house in Dearborn with a book, with our book.
Okay.
Okay. And he wanted it autographed. So, we invited him in and just became instant friends. It was really something. And then he went on to help us in many, many areas in the lighthouse world too. Just from his heart, he produced film, and it's really amazing his talent and his passion for Great Lakes maritime history, whether it's shipwrecks or lighthouses, and the people involved.
No, he's got the heart for it, and I hope to I hope to get as much out of both you and him as long as I can. And that's incredible. Man, he was probably still in diapers when you met him. That's I got we got.
He was, Rick. Yeah, tell me, were you in diapers? I think so. He was wet behind the ears. I know that. Oh, to watch him grow the way he did. Oh my God, it's just amazing. Seriously.
Yeah. Where
I feel like a mom or even a grandma to him, where, oh my gosh, to see this guy develop. And I mean, there's no stopping him. It's wonderful.
no, he's a one of a kind. Absolutely, no doubt. Um, cool. I want to you in our phone call we had talked about artifacts as well, didn't we? And what you went through to get those through the museum by the Mackinac Bridge. Is that I'm going off of memory here for is that you
Yes,
had
yes,
something
that
with
that
it?
was a major part of our life. Well,
Yeah.
certainly when we were in the scuba club in 1976 and 77, 78, uh, they taught us part of the thing you learn to do were to take artifacts off shipwrecks. Okay. And so we did that. We took a total of 52 artifacts off shipwrecks in the Straits of Mackinac, especially the Eber Ward. And then we preserved them. We didn't sell them as some people wanted us to. We preserved them for hopes that there would be a museum in the Straits that could house these. But it took quite a while. But the big thing about those artifacts is that we knew that eventually that they would be preserved, and then that the shipwreck should be preserved, the artifacts on the shipwreck should be preserved. And so in 1980, Chuck became the first public member at large for the Underwater Salvage Committee and helped uh, not only make the boundaries of the Straits of Mackinac Underwater Preserve, he also helped develop the law. And here we are with all these artifacts, right? But we didn't know any better then, but we sure learned to know better and were very active in the preservation effort. So that's why when the Phil Porter from the Mackinac Historic State Parks Commission, he was the director then. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you how this all started with the artifacts. And we learned about all this was Rick Mixter and the other guy, Ron Bloomfield, big guy in this business too, came to our house in Dearborn to interview us about preservation. And it was really something. And then I remember, and that thing is available, I think, on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen that or not yet, Jake, but it's a fascinating piece that Rick filmed back then. Anyway, so Ron put a bug into Phil, the director's ear, that we had all these artifacts. We wanted to preserve it for the public to see in a museum. Give it back to the state of Michigan, ideally. And and so that one thing led to another. That ball started rolling, and Phil was there was an oil building near the lighthouse in the Straits of Mackinac, the old Mackinac Point Light, that they wanted to build as part of their historic development there. So then they decided, well, let's put all these artifacts in this oil building. So they built the building, and then they came with well, it was Steve Brisson. Let's see, it was Phil Porter, Steve Brisson. Brian Jeske. I don't know if you know those people from Mackinac, just
Mm-mm.
wonderful people that run that show there. Anyway, they came to our house on Drummond Island and with a big van and hauled off. And we had all these artifacts labeled, and they were clean and labeled, and they hauled off our stuff. And it took a couple of years, but they had them all these artifacts professionally cleaned and restored. It was just amazing the effort that they put into these artifacts. So yeah, now you go to that museum today, and a lot of our artifacts are there. It's really something when I go there to see that. So I feel so blessed that this this museum developed, that we could now forever. It's owned by the state of Michigan. All the artifacts are, and they switch off some of the artifacts in the museum, but the kids are there. I've been there where the little kids are there looking at this, that, and the other thing. It's just fascinating to see that. So that is a very significant part of our, I like to say, contribution.
Yeah.
But
One more time for so people when they're going to visit. So the museum, just so people are clear for new timers, the museum is what was it called again? For people.
it's called the Shipwrecks of the Straits of Mackinac Museum.
Okay. And that's in that's the one that's right under the bridge, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
It's in Mackinac City, and it's right next to the Old Point Mackinac Light. It's part of that complex.
So
Fabulous place.
remember that people next time you go to visit Mackinac and you are checking out some cool stuff in there, think of Jerry and Chuck. That is your connection that you get to have on that. Now you're a part of that. So that's
Yes.
that's incredible to see all that stuff. What okay, so what was for you, I'll ask you personally, what was the most interesting? I'm sure all of it was interesting, but if you could pick out something, what was like the most wow, this thing, what was something that for you at least kinda stood out maybe more than the others, if I could ask?
Of the artifacts?
Yeah.
Well, they're two on opposite ends. One I was fascinated with because I like to be in the kitchen. I like to cook, where all of the dishes, cups, and pots and pans that were strewn along the bottom of the Eber Ward in 140 feet of water. And I was filming all of these. And and then of course we, took some up, which are now in the museum. But that just really got to me because I thought, wow, yes, they cooked on this on this ship. They had these dishes, and people ate from them, and now they're sitting on the bottom of 140 feet of water under the straits. It was a real humbling experience. I guess it would be the right word to say. And then the other, I guess we go from there to the other major artifact that we took up was the steam whistle from the Eber Ward. And it was a huge 5 foot, maybe 4 feet brass, and copper, I think, item. You know what a steam whistle? It's in our book. You could see the picture of it. And in fact, one of our friends that visited us on Drummond Island, and we had that in our living room, wanted to said, "I will pay you $15,000 for this. Can I have it?" And we said, "There's no way." My whole idea was, no, every single artifact is going to be in a museum someday, someday, and it sits there as one of their main displays. That was the most powerful artifact, I think. And then we had it restored and in working order. Put a lot of funds into getting it to work again.
Incredible. That something so simple, like you're saying, like the looking in the kitchen, like here, this is where these people ate and worked and lived and did their thing, and then the whistle having bringing that up, just incredible. I love that.
It really was. Now, the thing is, again, I go back to a place, to all the divers out there. Leave, don't take anything from these wrecks. We did it because we were taught to, and we were good at it. But then, we were able to, thank God, save every artifact and donate it to the museum and, back to the state of Michigan. But obviously, these artifacts need to stay on the wreck. But we didn't know that. We knew it a couple of
Yeah.
years later and worked hard at preserving those artifacts.
Now, would you say as well for today? Because I mean, even today, there's still hundreds, if not thousands, of wrecks that haven't been discovered. Would you still say to be a part of the right way of preserving some of these artifacts today? Or would you still be for that, or how would you? Because there's still
Well, I would say, no, I'm for,
Okay.
I'm for not taking any items off of shipwrecks.
okay,
Clearly, I've been that way for, many, many years, since 1980, actually, when we helped get the Public Act, I think it's 178, instilled. But
That
yeah, that's
definitely.
what I'm hoping. Now, there are some circumstances, I'm sure, for some divers or some ships that I don't know what the circumstances are. You have to file a permit, and certain circumstances, maybe you can take things up. I'm not sure what the law is today, honestly.
right. Definitely, probably definitely photograph it, definitely film it, definitely get it like archived in the right way. But yeah, yeah, it's a hard one. Like, because sometimes those wrecks have been sitting down there for 100 plus years, and it gets discovered, and then like with the mussels, a lot of times those artifacts I hear can either they'll be lost to time or
Yes, yes, definitely would be. And then